politics.
The 2021 legislative session has come to a close, so today we're taking a look at how Utah children fared. For that, we turn to Anna Brower-Thomas with Voices for Utah Children. Anna, welcome back to the show. Always glad to have you on.
Thanks. It's good to see you again.
Well, we always appreciate the work you do on behalf, and your organization do on behalf of Utah's children. I'd like to get your thoughts first on how you manage this complex legislative session, because it was very different than years past. How did it work out for you?
Well, I think it was very strange, and I think I spent, and many of my colleagues too, the first couple of weeks just trying to understand what the heck was going on, how we were going to get the attention of our legislators to talk about these complex issues. But we hit our stride about mid-session, and I think it turned out okay. The legislators and their staff especially were very good about just rolling with the punches. So I think it turned out okay.
Yeah, I think it was a bit of a learning curve for everyone
Definitely.
At the beginning that kind of made way, as you suggested, as the session went on. Okay, overall, how did the session go for Utah children? What's your assessment?
I would say pretty good. I want to kind of balance my desire to be optimistic about the progress that was made. There were some really good efforts around access to health care, early education, juvenile justice, and of course there were some things that didn't happen that could have happened, and I don't want people to forget that we have a long way to go. But I think overall, pretty well for kids.
Okay, let's get into some of the specifics. You already mentioned access to health care. That was a big one, made even more so probably by the pandemic.
Definitely.
Give us an idea of what happened that way, because there were some big strides made.
Definitely. So obviously, we released some data in the past year about Utah's decrease in the number of children who have health insurance. We are one of the lowest ranking states in that regard, and the lowest in terms of Latinx kids who have health insurance. So a couple of good bills. There's one from a new legislator, Representative Welton, I believe, that just focuses on outreach to help make sure kids and their families are aware of the CHIP program. And then a very ambitious, very important bill that Senator Luz Escamilla sponsored that makes sure that kids get on Medicaid when they're eligible, and that they stay on Medicaid instead of being dropped off when things change for their family. So lots of stuff in her bill. That would be a big jump forward for kids in terms of access to health care.
Okay, a couple of things I want to dig into there. One, you mentioned the outreach program and why that's so important, because there are a lot of kids here in Utah who are eligible, but they just don't know it, or their parents are maybe afraid to take advantage of that. Talk about the barriers there.
There are some barriers around people not thinking that these programs are for them and for their children, but there actually are a lot of families that are eligible, and there's no shame in taking advantage of support for getting your kids to the doctor and getting their health insurance taken care of through Medicaid or CHIP. The last few years have also been very difficult in terms of outreach in immigrant communities based on some information around federal legislation and executive orders related to the public charge. So there have been some very specific hurdles to getting kids engaged, but we can all agree it's more important than ever before during this pandemic that kids have coverage.
Okay, so before Medicaid expansion, there was this thought that that could potentially help more children get signed up for CHIP, because as parents got onto the Medicaid rolls, maybe they would then enroll their children in the program as well. You already mentioned Utah's status in this, but has it gotten better since Medicaid expansion?
I am incredibly out of my depth on that question. I would have to defer to my excellent colleagues, Jesse Mandel and Cyriac Alvarez-Valle on that. But I think because our rollout of Medicaid expansion, if your viewers remember, was a bit choppy, and there was a lot of confusion around who was eligible and when and at what point we had full Medicaid eligibility and expansion. I think that created some confusion, understandably, for the public, and hopefully we'll be able to catch up and see those gains. And it's impossible to know what the intervention of a year of global pandemic did in terms of what we normally would have expected to happen.
That's a good point, no doubt about that. Okay, back to this eligibility and continuous coverage bill from Senator Escamilla. Tell us how that can really help children that are able to take advantage of that.
Well, families need to know that they have the stability of coverage for a full year when they enroll in something like Medicaid. And so making sure that kids don't get bumped off Medicaid, my colleagues call it churn, when their families experience a minor change in income, maybe for a month by taking a second or seasonal job. The continuity is really important. And as we're coming out of the pandemic, we have a lot of catching up to do in terms of child visits and vaccinations and kids getting back in the routine of seeing their doctors. So having the stability and the access to their doctor's offices is going to be really important.
Let's talk education funding. We've seen a sizable investment. Also, we had Constitutional Amendment G playing a factor. But talk about some of the other investments the legislature is making that you believe could really help on the education front.
Yeah, I think people are fairly relieved and pleased, I would say, that the legislature followed through with some of their promises regarding education funding related to Constitutional Amendment G. There were some really great early education programs that were funded and in some cases refunded, having experienced a cut in funding after the pandemic began and we were concerned about the state budget. Additional money for optional enhanced kindergarten. This is a pot of money that lots of districts use to offer full day kindergarten programs to families in their community that want to use it. Additional money that has been needed to supplement the state's high quality school readiness program, which is a high quality preschool program funded by the state. And then some significant investment in early learning training and assessments for public educators. An excellent bill by Representative Waldrop that passed last session, was funded, and then had that funding stripped away. The funding appears to be back.
All right. One last thing I want to get into. Always an important issue for parents when they're trying to work and keep their job and take care of the family. That would be childcare. Talk about any advancements there this session.
Huge issue. And if there is a silver lining with regard to the stresses and the difficulties that working families with children have faced over the past year, it's that there has been a huge spotlight shown on the need for childcare and how critical it is to our workforce and workers across the country. An excellent bill by a brand new legislator, Representative Matthews, will help direct expanded eligibility for working families over the next couple of years using additional federal funding that's been made available due to the pandemic, and also changing some policies with regard to how child care providers are paid for children who are receiving state child care support that should really help to stabilize and support our child care sector, which has been extremely hard hit by the pandemic and by all that related stress.
All right, and that's an obvious benefit to a child when their parent has that ability.
Definitely.
And that available to them so that they can maintain their jobs and keep the money coming in. Anna, always great to have you on the show. Again,
Thank you.
Like I said, appreciate the work you do up on the Hill. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for the chance to say it.
You bet. We'll be right back with more Inside Utah Politics right after the break. Stay with us.